Yeah. Uh. Yeah. Let's go. Wow. Uh-huh. Let's go. Yeah. Y'all ready? And another one. Wow. Pura vida, mi gente. Much love and respect. Thanks for tuning in once again. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to do that always. Salute to everybody in the chat, in the live chat. Much love to all the tribes out there, all the people. Hey, Olmec 12, much love and respect. Thank you for that. Yeah. Hey, shout out to Breeze 3000. Bezo Breeze for the beat, the intro. All right, today we're gonna continue reading a book we read in the first part of The Real Pirates of the Caribbean. We're gonna get into chapter 1 today. All right, just continue that real quick. If you don't mind, we're gonna read this together. So I hope you guys enjoy. Much love, much love. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry guys, I was talking muted. My fault. Wow. You guys hear my intro? Oh man. It's all good, it's all good. Thought so. I'm just gonna read this book again today. We did part 1, Pirates of the Caribbean. Real quick, I was just saying about my channel. If you'd like to support what I do on my Patreon page or by joining my club on the YouTube, you know, I just added this. You know, they wanted me to do it a long time ago. So you get a couple of perks here. I did do a live today, members only live. If you missed it earlier today, just test it out. Pretty cool. All right, so this is what I was showing. All right, this is the members only video. This is the perks you get if you join the channel. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the support, all the real ones on my Patreons, all the moderators, all the long-time followers. Thank you. The music was nice, at least, right? So, Jewish pirates of the Caribbean. How a generation of swashbuckling Jews carved out an empire in the New World in their quest for treasure, religious freedom, and revenge by Edwards Pritzler. We read the prologue and introduction, part one. So we're going to go into chapter one today. And again, hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in and hearing me read. Chapter 1. Columbus and Jamaica's chosen people. Jamaica, Jamaica. It was May 1504, Santa Gloria, Jamaica. For nearly a year, Columbus had been stranded in Jamaica with a hoard of gold, a mutinous crew, and a few dozen teenage loyalists, some of whom were secret Jews, crypto Jews, Sephardic Jews. Alone, melancholy, and confined to his cabin by a gout, the great explorer wrote his patron Queen Isabella a despairing letter. He feared that even if he defeated the mutineers, the governor of Santo Domingo, who had promised to send a rescue ship, wanted him dead. So much had happened since he had been making the rounds of Europe, a would-be explorer going from king to king, seeking royal backing for a promised quick passage west across the ocean sea to India and the wealth of the East. In 1486, at his first meeting with Spain's royal couple, King Ferdinand, although intrigued by the plan, told Columbus the time was not opportune. They were in the midst of a war and could not seriously consider such an important matter until peace was restored. In parting, Queen Isabella counseled patience and awarded Columbus a retainer, promising they would meet again when the war was over. On January 12, 1492, Columbus entered the royal quarters. He had summoned a few days after Spain's final victory over the Moors at Granada, and the Queen had sent him money to buy new clothes and a mule to ride. Encouraged by her gift, Columbus was confident. He had honed his proposal into a detailed presentation with maps and charts from the Jewish astronomer Abraham Sakuto, and quotes from Bible and Greek sages supporting his view. Greek sages, he's talking about going to America, guys. The Bible and Greek sages, remember? The Greeks knew about Atlantis, right? / America. Supporting his view that the world was round, the oceans not large, and Japan lay 3,000 miles to the west across the ocean sea. Prepared for questions, he received none. After an unsettling silence, Ferdinand spoke. Victory over the Moors had emptied the treasury, he said. Moreover, he could not abide Columbus' demand for hereditary rule over the lands he might discover. The Queen, his admirer, said nothing. The meeting broke up and Columbus left, angry and disgusted. All this time he had waited for the war to end. Now that it had, Ferdinand was pleading poverty. Pausing briefly in the corridor, he informed the king's treasurers that he was leaving for France, and Bartholomew, his younger brother, was arranging an audience with the king. If that monarch wasn't interested, he would cross the channel to meet with the English king. He would not be denied his dreams. One that Cervantes wrote of Don Quixote, he hugged and would not part with, even if barefoot friars had begged him. Before Columbus rode past the gates of Santa Fe, the royal treasurer, Luis Santangel, remember Luis Santangel? He was the Sephardic Jew, the banker, the merchant who actually funded Columbus. We've got this on many drops before. He sought and was granted an audience with Queen Isabella. The royal chronicler noted, Santangel appeared distressed as if a great misfortune had befallen him personally. He had good reason. Santangel was a secret Jew, and as a member of the royal court, he was aware his people were about to be expelled from Spain. There were upward of 500,000 Jews in the country. They had called home since the time of Christ. Where would they go? India? China. Perhaps the explorer Columbus would discover a new land somewhere. Santangel and other secret Jews in the royal service hoped Columbus' voyage would provide an answer. All right. So what's going on? The Moors, Sephardic Jews were getting kicked out of Portugal and Spain, the Inquisition. Same year, guys, 1492, a couple months before. They had no choice but to leave. This is not just an any expedition. They had to leave. And so as it says here, they're like, hey, please find us a home, huh? Please find us a home, Columbus. We know you can do it. Nobody doubted he wouldn't find land because they knew there was land over there. He wasn't lost. He wasn't searching for Hindustan, right? Because India wasn't called India back then. We can't say he was going to the India of today. India Superior, North America. India Superior, Asia Major. So-called Atlantis. Antilles, right? The Inquisition mandated that Jews, under penalty of death, must either leave or convert to Catholicism. Santangel, like many others, had converted and became a new Christian. If discovered Judaism, the converts were liable to be burned at the stake, and Santangel family, long established in Spain, was among the first targets of the Inquisition. Luis' cousins had gone up in the flames in Zaragoza, and only the intervention of Ferdinand had prevented Louis from suffering the same fate. I just want to point out that, as you guys can hear what's going on with, with the Inquisition, we know, but also just this name of this town, Zaragoza, retaining a name of the ancient line of Sarah, the line of Sarah, one of Judah's sons. Santangel addressed the queen. He was astonished, he told her, to see Her Highness, who has always shown such resolute spirit in matters of great consequence, should lack it now for an enterprise of so little risk, for so vast a gain. So little risk. So you think if he was actually going to go see if he discovered something, that wouldn't be a risk? That's what they're saying. There is no risk because they knew there was land over there. Vatican had the maps already, and there was much to be gained. He spoke to the queen of the wealth to be acquired. How do they know about all the wealth to be acquired if they just discovered it? And the great services she would render to God, all for the price of a few caravels, ships, alluding to Columbus' plan to seek royal backing elsewhere. He cautioned Isabella. It would be a great damage to her crowning, a grave reproach to Her Highness, if any other prince should undertake what Columbus offered Her Highness. If money was a consideration, Santangel said, he would be glad to finance the fleet himself. So, just want to point out again, I got a lot of new subscribers. Columbus, that's his enterprise name, his corporation name. His real name was Salvador Fernandez Zarco. That was the real name of so-called Columbus. I got a video on that, check it out. A mounted messenger caught up with Columbus, so-called, as he was crossing the bridge of the Pines, 7 miles from Santa Fe, and bade him return. Later that day, with all parties again gathered in the royal quarters, the king informed Columbus that the crown would sponsor his enterprise of the Indies and meet his demands. No mention was made of hereditary title. 2 months later, it was still a stumbling block in his negotiations when an event occurred that made his inclusion mandatory. On the morning of March 31st, 1492, Columbus was in his room in Santa Fe overlooking the main square when the sound of trumpets brought him to his balcony. Below, the town crier, flanked by mounted guards, read the expulsion order of the Inquisition. The Jews had 4 months to leave. After that, Any caught in our domains will be punished without trial by death and seizure of property. The Jews of Spain had been threatened with expulsion before. Rulers since the Visigoths had used this threat to extract more money from them. A period joke compared the Jews to a money box that you break open when you need money. But this time it was different. The church was involved. To the Jews of the royal court who supported Columbus, the expulsion order made it essential that Columbus hold out for hereditary rule. If no Asian kingdom welcomed Jewish refugees, Columbus, as the ruler of a new land, would be able to provide a haven for Spanish Jews, a haven for Sephardic Jews. You see the real plans, right? He wasn't lost, guys. Isn't that happening today? Isn't something like this happening today in the news? Somebody, hey, this is my land, we need a haven, It is thought that Columbus himself was a descendant of Spanish Jews, the Colon family. Again, he was a Portuguese Sephardic Jew, his real name Salvador Fernandez Sarco, and moved to Genoa a century before the heels of the massacre of 1391. Some even contend he was a Kabbalist. Whatever his genealogy, whatever, right? Whatever, they don't want you to really know. But he's of the same line of the Sarcos and the Henry, right? Henry the Navigator. That's his great uncle. He was in sympathy with the people of the book. The people of the book, Hebrews, Israelites. And they with him in his early years in Portugal and Spain. He lived in largely Jewish and New Christian world of navigators. All right? Cartographers, astronomers, and mathematicians. While others looked askance at this wandering sailor and laughed at his dream, Iberian Jews and conversos assisted Columbus in developing his enterprise of the Indies. Come on, we already got this, like he's telling it a certain way, but we know who really funded him. You know what they were really planning to do. In their learned circles, they dealt with a round world. Church geography did not apply to them. On April 17, Columbus agreed to the capitulations of Santa Fe, which limited his rights to lifetime rule. 2 weeks later, this ruling was reversed, and Columbus was granted hereditary rule. No account exists of the final negotiations, but it is likely that court Jews, facing the forced exile of their people, counseled Columbus to hold firm to his demand. One imagines a scene in the royal chambers with Santangel persuading the royals that the explorer's demand should not trouble them. If his voyages were successful, Columbus and his crew of 90 men could not possibly subdue one of the powerful Asian nations. On the other hand, if he took possession of a few islands along the way, the crown would benefit by having way stations for Spain's trading ships plying the shortcut passage to the wealth to the east, or of the east. Whether or not such a scene took place, Ferdinand finally relented. Columbus would sail with his right to rule any new lands he discovered, to be enjoyed forever by his heirs and successors. After Columbus returned from his successful first voyage, the first voyage guide was scouting missions, reconnaissance missions, scouting mission. Yeah, he acted friendly and all that. He brought actually a lot of Indians back as slaves. And then he brought the warships, the military on voyage number 2. He made 3 more trips across the Western Sea. He never reached Asia. He reached Asia Major, and didn't live long enough to fulfill his pledge to Santangel and the court Jews to provide a homeland for converted Jews, but it would be kept by his family in the new land. The crown did bequeath to Columbus' descendants the island of Jamaica. How this came about goes back to promise he made to the teenage conversos who stood by with him when he was marooned there. Returning from his 4th voyage to the New World, Columbus had been forced to beach his ships in Jamaica after sailing from Panama with a cache of gold objects bartered from the Indians. His two ships were leaking badly. Columbus hoped to reach Santo Domingo to obtain others to return to Spain, but his worm-eaten caravels, described by his son as more full of holes than a bee's honeycomb, barely made Jamaica. With water rising in their holes, he ran them aground and lashed them together in a shallow, becalmed bay on the island's north coast. A crossbow shot from land. Atop his foredeck he fashioned a palm thatch hut to serve as his cabin. In his first letter to the Queen, written soon after he arrived, he bragged that he had discovered the source of Solomon's gold in the mines of Panama, and claimed to have seen more gold in a few days there than in all his previous trips. His 14-year-old son, Fernando, brought along as cabin boy, later recorded that his father had traded small bells and mirrors for 63 gold pendants and other gold objects with the Veragua Indians of Panama. All right, Veragua. And Veragua actually includes parts of Costa Rica and Panama in those times, if you look at old maps. This was his second trip to Jamaica. When he had discovered the island in 1494, he had named the Half Moon Bay where he was now stranded, Santa Gloria, for the beauty of its glorious landscape. After a year, he thought he might never leave. Was this where his life was to end? Uncertain of his future, he wrote his queen, "We have been confined 10 months, lodged on the decks of our ships. My men have mutinied. My brother, my son, and those that are faithful are sick, starving, and dying. Governor Ovando of Santo Domingo has sent to see if I am dead rather than to carry me back alive. I conclude your officers intend my life should terminate here." Hey Sunshine, I got a video on that. Check out all my previous videos, guys. So we're not talking about Columbus or morality or how good or bad he was, but we have talked about that before. And who he is, it don't matter. Sephardic Jew, this is a so-called black man. Yeah, this was a black man. Crayon colored man. The object of his cynicism was the arrival the previous week of a ship from Ovando. It had anchored outside the reef in the late afternoon and left before dawn. Before sailing away, its captain ferried over a side of ham, a barrel of wine, and a message from the governor that a rescue ship would soon be sent. The governor's message did confirm the safe arrival of Columbus' first mate, Diego Mendez, who 10 months before had set forth in a dugout canoe to carry news of their plight to Santo Domingo. But as he wrote the Queen, he really believed the ship had been sent to spy on how I might be totally destroyed. Made furious by his suspicions, Columbus concluded his letter with an angry vow. Should he die in Jamaica and his propriety rights be withdrawn, ingratitude will bring down the wrath of heaven, so that the wealth that I have discovered shall be the means of stirring up all mankind to revenge, and the Spanish nation shall suffer hereafter. Yeah, you see that thread he left? That prophecy? Fortunately for Columbus, Isabella never received his threat. Having no way to send this letter, Columbus could only call on the good angels that succor the oppressed and innocent to bring this paper to my great mistress. Apparently no heavenly couriers were listening, as this little known letter never left the island. His earlier letter, carried by Mendez, had been forwarded to her from Santo Domingo. The mutiny referred to in his despairing missive had broken out 5 months earlier when Francisco Porras, captain of one of the ships, burst in on the admiral and his straw cabin and demanded they leave at once. He and his brother Diego, the fleet's notary, accused Columbus of having deliberately marooned them in Jamaica, knowing he was unwelcome in Santo Domingo. The Porras brothers' insurrection was joined by most of the older seamen, who after 6 months in Santa Gloria wanted out. Columbus declared he would not leave, but rather than battle the mutineers, agreed to let them go. Crying, "I am for Castile, follow me," the rebel leader seized the dozen canoes, Columbus had bartered from the Indians, forcing the natives to row. All right, forcing the natives to row as slaves. Right, the rebels made 3 attempts to overcome the fierce currents of the 108-mile wide channel to Hispaniola. On their final try, they gave up, though only after throwing 18 Indian paddlers overboard and chopping off the hands of those who clung to the side. You guys hear that? What they did to the Indians? These melanated Sephardic Jews from Spain and Portugal, only to save themselves? Huh? Such holy Jews, huh? 5 months later, after a 2-week march across the island marked by rape and pillage, they were encamped in an Indian village a half-mile from Santa Gloria, intending to seize the admiral's ships. All right, in Jamaica. Hey, old Mc12, much love, brother. Appreciate you joining the club, the Cody Mail Club on YouTube. Columbus had just finished his troubled letter to the Queen when the 2 men he had sent to parley with the rebels returned. They had taken an offer of pardon and a promise that they would soon be rescued, but Porras rebuffed them. When his emissaries reported that Porras' men were preparing for battle, Columbus withdrew to his cabin in despair. But Bartholomew, his fierce younger brother, convinced him to take the fight to the enemy. He armed the 50 young loyalists and set forth to attack the rebel camp. When the mutineers saw Columbus' teenage army approach, they laughed. There was no way mere Jews, brought up in a softer mode of life, could defeat such a hardy sailors, rendered robust and vigorous by their roving life. But the rebels' confidence was premature. In a superhuman effort, Bartholomew slew the 6 mutineers sent to attack him and had the point of his sword at Porras' breast when the rest surrendered. The Porras brothers were put in irons aboard ship, and the 48 rebels were disarmed and kept on shore. With peace restored, a reunited, mistrustful crew nervously awaited their promised rescue. Even if Ovando did send a ship, Columbus had little faith in his gold medallions would be safe in Hispaniola, whose previous governor, he wrote the Queen, robbed me and my brother of our dearly purchased gold. He expected no less from Ovando. During the tense 5 weeks before 2 rescue ships arrived, one sent by Mendez, the other by Ovando, he rarely left his cabin. Never again did he set foot on Jamaica. What happened to gold of Veragua? What happened to the gold of Veragua? We're talking about Panama and Costa Rica. The crown had instructed Columbus that if treasure was found, you must draw up an account of all this in the presence of our notary, so that we may know everything that the said islands and mainland may contain. Yet the 63 medallions from Panama are not mentioned in the notary's account, nor are they listed in the inventory of the ship that brought him home to Spain. Unsure his gold would survive Ovando's rescue, Columbus would not have left the gold in Hispaniola. Columbus also had reason to fear a renewed mutiny on the way back to Spain. It is therefore unlikely that he kept the gold with him. That leaves Jamaica. All right, so this is, I guess they're getting into the legend. There's this legend of this gold that was left there by the Spanish that people are still looking for today in Jamaica. Since he never left the ship and trusted no one but his son and brother and a core group of loyalists, he presumably asked members of this latter group to transfer this gold to safety. There were 2 good reasons he could count on these youths, whose unstinting loyalty he vowed to reward. First, they had a fiscal interest in the voyage, as their fathers helped finance it. Jews. Second, their families, being wealthy conversos, crypto Jews, were targeted by the Inquisition. It is reasonable, therefore, to postulate that, to keep their sons safe, Columbus' backers persuaded him to take them along. While the Jewish youngsters may have looked to Columbus as their Moses, as he himself did, Jamaica was no promised land. Still, for teenagers forced to lead underground lives in Spain, a year's idle on a tropical island was nearly as good. When not swimming around their rotten ships or diving off a yardarm or yardarm, they wrestled on the beach and otherwise contested for the favor of the naked Indian girls, huh? The naked Indian girls who daily brought food and lingered to watch the young gods at play. The young gods, huh? The young melanated folks from Spain and Portugal, Sephardic Jews. If Columbus didn't trust them with the cachet of gold, he would undoubtedly have called the boys to his cabin and instructed them to deliver it to Chief Güero, his Indian ally, and the island's most powerful cacique. Chief Güero, Columbus' strongest ally, who had outfitted Mendez on his successful crossing to Hispaniola and remained loyal after a prophetic night when Columbus' God ate the moon. So you guys see that? Columbus knew about certain eclipses that were about to happen. So we read this before, he tricked a lot of these Spaniards, would trick the Indians into thinking they were like gods because they can predict when celestial event was going to happen. So as they say here, he was able to trick Chief Güero. He became his loyal. He's like, oh, this guy can, he could communicate with God. He made God eat the moon, made the moon disappear, right? Columbus had noted in Zacuto's almanac that a full eclipse was due. Listen, he knew from Zacuto's almanac that there was an actual full eclipse was due in the early evening of February 29, 1504. Oh, he was lost, right? He was lost, but he knew all this was going to happen in America. And he was going to use it to his advantage, right? The natives, turned off by the rapacious ways of the mutineers, no longer saw their visitors as gods. They ain't gods. They're evil people. And having their fill of Spanish trinkets, had begun withholding food supplies from the Spaniards, who Fernando wrote, consumed more in one day than the Indians ate in 20. Columbus saw the celestial event as an opportunity to rectify this by taking their moon away. Listen, come on. On the day of the eclipse, he summoned the chiefs for a feast and a palaver and told them, listen, guys, this is part of history they don't really teach. Attend tonight the rising of the moon. She will rise in flame with wrath, signifying the punishment God will visit upon you. When the eclipse began shortly after the sunset, Columbus retreated to his cabin. The Indians grew so frightened, wrote Fernando, that with great howling and lamentation they came running in all directions to the ships, laden with provisions and praying for the admiral to intercede with his God, that he might not vent his wrath upon them. When the moon was in full shadow, Columbus emerged. He had pleaded with his God, he told them, who agreed to forgive them as long as the Indians kept the Christians supplied. As proof they would soon see the moon's anger and inflammation pass away. From that time forward, wrote Fernando, the Indians were diligent in providing us with all we needed and were loud in the praise of the Christian God. Uh-oh. The eclipse vindicated Güero, who afterward presented Columbus with a tribute of small disc of gold from his previously undisclosed mine. Considering Columbus' desperate straits, it is thought he called on Güero to safeguard his gold. If so, he would have had his young allies transported under the cover of darkness. Although there is no hard evidence for this account of Columbus' alleged gold mine, it is supported by later developments, including the return to Jamaica of the converso Jews after their rescue. Having left the land of the Inquisition, they chose to remain in Hispaniola when the rescue ships landed in Santo Domingo, rather than accompany Columbus and the crew back to Spain. In November of 1504, Columbus had been back only 3 weeks when his patroness, Isabella, died. The following May, the king offered him a rich estate and pension if he would relinquish his rights of discovery. Ferdinand regretted allowing Isabella to persuade him to empower Columbus with all sorts of rights and privileges, but although Columbus was in declining health, he was not about to surrender his hard-won titles. A little more than a year later, he made out his will and died the next day, May 20th, 1506. All right, so they leaving a lot out. He was brought back to Spain in chains, guys. He was arrested. He didn't have a good end. Sarco, Salvador Fernandez Sarco. So on 1506, they're saying he passed away with his loyal mate Diego Mendez and the son Fernando by his side. 3 years afterwards, Columbus' eldest son Diego, having inherited his titles, arrived in Hispaniola to replace Ovando as governor. Accompanying him were his younger brother Fernando and his uncle Bartolome. This was their first trip back to the Indies since their rescue. A contemporary painting shows them seated around a conference table in the governor's mansion. One issue they hoped to resolve was dealt with right away when Diego recruited Portuguese from Hispaniola, Sephardic Jews that were in Hispaniola, or Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic in Haiti, to reconnoiter Jamaica in advance of settling the island. Since Diego's uncle and brother left for Spain right after, the Portuguese returned. It is apparent they had come for the left-behind gold of Columbus. Nothing more is heard of the 63 gold pendants, but Chief Güero's mine begat the legend of Columbus' secret golden mine, which has not yet been opened by the King of Spain or any other. The gold is still there if you guys want to go look. To lead the Jamaican expedition, Diego had appointed Juan de Esquivel, a converso, a crypto Jew, who served under Bartolomeo, landing on the coast of Güero's domain. Esquivel founded Melilla, which is the name of a Spanish port in Morocco that, coincidentally or not, alone in the empire was exempted from the expulsion order and remained a haven for Jews after the port was captured by Spain in 1497. When Esquivel returned to Hispaniola, and it is thought delivered the 63 medallions to Bartholomew, Diego appointed him Jamaica's governor and directed the loyal conversos to return to the island. Thus began the settlement of Jamaica, a Caribbean island that, like Melilla and Morocco, would henceforth serve as a haven for Jews. All right, Jamaica, 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 out of many one people. Yeah, they apply too. In 1511, a flotilla of ships carrying more than 8,000 settlers dropped anchor in Santa Gloria, near the beach where Columbus was marooned. And then talking about maroons, yeah, it included some of them too. Expecting to find gold and create a new world, capital arrival in Seville. The settlers laid out a city 2 miles long and named it Nueva Sevilla, right? New Seville in Jamaica. New Seville of gold, del oro. Golden New Seville. Seville of gold. Unlike the Portuguese, or the Sephardic Jews from Portugal, the newcomers were of minor Spanish nobility and had come to seek their fortune. A contemporary wrote, they fancied that gold was to be gathered as easily and readily as fruits from trees. However, when they realized they had to dig for it, and even then with rare success, disillusion quickly set in. The toilsome job of excavating the ore from the bowels of the earth was given over to the Indians. Oh yeah, we'll take over. We'll do it for you guys. Yeah, right. That was slavery. Slavery. Not Africans, Indians. In the mines. Not Africans, Indians. Oh, check out my series, The Real Slave Trade. Within a decade, gold was being mined in Jamaica. But after Diego Columbus and the king had taken their share, the amount from the smelting house was not enough to satisfy the hidalgos, among whom were some former mutineers and their leader, Francisco Porras. That these rebels chose to return to the island they had risked their lives suggests they believed there was more gold in Jamaica than what was being mined. It is therefore not surprising that Columbus' family and their allies, the Portugals, Portuguese Jews, kept Güero's mines a secret. Despite the paucity of gold, island life was pleasantly rewarding. Living in the islands, huh? Jamaica was a fertile land, and the average allotment of 150 to 200 pacified Indians per settlers. Listen, they all got 200. Listen, they all got 150 to 200 slaves slash servants. This was the encomienda system in Spanish. And these people were called encomenderos, just like saying plantation owners, slave masters, whatever you want to call it. But these were the Indians they had under these indentures or encomienda. And they all got, each settler got about 150 to 200 pacified Indians. And it meant that one could have a successful ranching operation, made all the more comfortable by a modest harem of baptized Indian women. You can even grab as many women as you want. And again, guys, and I know why does he keep repeating that, but I just want to, oh, these Europeans, these were black folks. Columbus, these Sephardic Jews, these first settlers, these were all melanated people. Shout out to Drop. More and more war, huh? Jamaica was developing nicely as a food depot, supplying passing ships and breeding horses for the conquistadors. But then the Indians started dying. Unused to the white man's germs, they expired when they got sick, and a plague of smallpox finished them off. Soon everyone wanted to leave. In 1513, Esquivas reported that many of New Seville's colonists had left for Cuba. So they went from Jamaica to Cuba, a lot of them, leaving behind their caiguais, Portuguese servants. Their Portuguese servants, they left behind they had their own. So not only Indians, guys, listen, so not only Indians were used as servants, but they were bringing their own indentured servants from the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain. These they left behind, a lot of them, they're saying, who had moved to the south side of the island. We're talking about Jamaica, to carry on the cultivation of foodstuffs. The caiguais, all right, we're going to have to look into that. I am, had been considered personal baggage, and as such did not have to produce the clean blood certificates required of other settlers in the colony. Later developments indicate they were conversos. They still Sephardic Jews, crypto Jews. Okay? While New Seville struggled, the South Coast settlement flourished. Though the community was never formally recognized, a cryptic remark by Peter Martyr from 1511, the Royal Chronicler of the Indies, which books we're definitely going to get into one day, guys, more in detail, right? Makes an oblique reference to the conversos. I have these books. We've read them. I have many volumes. I've had all these books. These are really old books. After being made abbot of Jamaica in 1514, he wrote the king, "There are two settlements, but only one will have my church." The following year, a report from Jamaica's new governor, Francisco Garay, pointedly referred to the community having replaced Esquivel. Garay wrote his sovereign on the state of the island and underlined his intention to see the country and the site of the town on the other side. Later, he too would desert the island to join in the conquest of Mexico, leaving behind more caiguais, or poor Sephardic Jews of the lower class, to join those who had come before. From the time, so this is a lot of, listen, how many they're leaving, how many people in Jamaica, right? Sephardic Jews. We already know Portuguese Jews, how they're described in those times, physically. From the time that Santangel financed Columbus' enterprise, Santangel, it wasn't the Queen of Ferdinand, that's what I'm trying to tell you. His enterprise to the Indies and persuaded the royal couple to grant the explorer's family hereditary rights to any new land he might discover. Columbus sailed with a hidden agenda. Along with his stated goal of gaining the riches of the East, it was hoped he would acquire a new land where Sephardim could live free from the terrors of the Inquisition, all right? Where the Sephardis could live in the true promised land, America. They knew it was here. They wanted a piece of the land. They needed somewhere to go because they got kicked out of Europe. The discoverer of the Indies didn't rule long enough to make good promise to provide a homeland for converted Jews. But for more than a century, his heirs kept Jamaica off limits to the hooded inquisitors, who were empowered to root out heresy in all Spanish territories. As far as Jamaica's proprietors were concerned, as long as their Portugals wore a Christian mask, as long as they were pretending to be Jews, as long as they're pretending to be Jews, these Sephardic Jews from Portugal, no one might question the sincerity of their religious beliefs. Under the protection of the island's rulers, covert Jews came disguised as conversos from Portugal. Their presence there known and approved by the Spanish crown, all right? They all knew, everybody knew who was there. And the Catholics knew about it. All right? And that's the end of chapter 1. All right. It's going to get pretty interesting, the book. We're going to keep reading it. Hope you guys enjoyed chapter 1. And again, this is a history they kind of leave out of a lot of the history in Jamaica and to the people there. They don't really emphasize this part of history. They think it's just like a brief moment where the Spanish had rule, and you know, they just picture in Spanish like today, you know, this picture, you know, I don't know what they picture, but most people when they tell me they almost saying, you know, so-called white people. And or they're picturing Spanish like today, they're just picturing Catholic Empire, Holy Roman Empire, conquistadors, and again, black folks. A lot of them fleeing, a lot of them humble people, they're just trying to survive, but when they got here, a lot of them were enslaving and doing really bad stuff to the Indians. You know, we read the accounts. So not just Sephardic Jews, but many of the European colonists and conquistadors, you know, for their survival. But not all of them. A lot of them joined with the Indians. A lot of them married the Indians, had children, and you know, they didn't participate in things like that. A lot of this heritage is in you. A lot of these people maintain their crypto status or their secret status and never came out as Jews. And in society, they were known as so-called Christians or Protestants, Baptists, Presbyterians, Quakers. All right, so you might have this ancestry in you as well. What I'm trying to say, we're showing it in many ways. Chapter 1, Columbus and Jamaica's chosen people. Let me see, we got Ocelot earlier in the house, you know, and this is like clockwork. So we're gonna go out with clockwork. Instrumental by Ocelot. And the reason we just ended it kind of early, guys, because you know chapters do get long, and we don't want to make them too long so people can actually sit through the videos. Even the children or younger people or people who have you know, less interest, you know, they might find it interested in. They might see it was not so long, you know. Let me sit down, and they might learn something about Jamaica that they didn't know, or about Sephardic Jews, and or who are these so-called Spaniards and the difference between certain Spanish, you know. Hey, Vicar Emerson's World, thank you. I really appreciate that very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate anybody that came through, any donations, always. The moderators. Hey, anybody in the club? Hey, welcome to the Cootie Mail YouTube club. Thank you guys. I'll make sure to hook up the perks and those things will get better. You know, just testing it out right now. Of course, I'm gonna always treat my Patreons the same. Much love to all the Patrons and that's been supporting, you know, for a long time. I know who's been there, so don't think I don't, guys. And this book actually we're reading today, I actually shared it on Patreon. So you know, I have a lot of books there on Patreon that I share for my supporters there. Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean: How a Generation of Smashbuckling Jews Carved Out an Empire in the New World in their quest for treasure, religious freedom, and revenge. All right. Pura vida. Yeah. Pura vida. Thanks for hearing me read once again. I got a lot of videos planned. Just try to bring out certain information so it doesn't get left behind. And again, this book was getting left behind. I want to just kind of read it a little bit more with you guys before we continue. All right, and get back into certain topics in Jamaica, so just we can have a background. You know, we can. When I say, remember we read this book, right? Remember we read this book. Remember we read about who was in Jamaica. You know, so not just. I know it's not just Sephardic Jews, but this is just one part of the people of the many nations, right? Out of many, one people. And yes, of course, a lot of indigenous heritage in Jamaica. Jamaica, Jamaica. I mean, look at the title of this chapter. Jamaica's chosen people. Chosen. Blessed. Pura vida, mi gente. Much love and respect. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Mucho amor. Much love. Stay strong. Stay positive. You know, stay strong for real. Stay positive. Let's create a better world. Let's create a better world. We got to control our thoughts too. We got to envision ourselves in this better world. Don't envision bad stuff, because that'll start happening if you keep envisioning that stuff. Envision good things. Let's make a better world. Just for the babies out there. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Shout out to all Meg 12 for going out. This is like clockwork, baby. Clockwork. Pull up.